Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. Later on we'll have a look at the bank holiday weekend. That'll be the final update that we do for bank holiday weekend. That'll be this evening. But this is going to have a look at weather the next 8 to 10 days. And we've got signs of an improvement coming up next week. I think we're going to lose the very cold air that we've got sitting across us at the moment. We'll lift the temperatures up. And there will still be changeable conditions at times next week. But overall, fair amount of high pressure, so I don't think we're looking at too much rain either. Reverting to a more typical mid to late spring pattern, I think, as we're going into next week. But I'll show you all the charts in a moment. We'll start off central in temperature. But before we get on with that, just very quick to say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse widgets, click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks very much for doing that. There's video ads on most pages, which open up the content. When you watch them, they'll close back up again. It does help to pay for GasWeatherViz.com. So I'll start off with the central England temperature from Hadley. This is provisional up to the 27th of April, so up to yesterday. We currently stand at 8.0, which is an anomaly of just 0.1 degree above average. So we're virtually bang on average, but it's a very, very cold night last night, for the time of year anyway. Temperatures going down widely below freezing. So I think when we look at this tomorrow, we will have a look at this at the start of JMA Friday tomorrow. When we look at this tomorrow, I suspect this is going to show that we've gone colder than average, and we've gone under 8 degrees Celsius in terms of our central England temperature. And remember, this is provisional, so when we get to the end of the month, I think we will have a downwards correction as well. I'm expecting this is going to be a colder than average month, both compared to 61 to 1990, and also the more modern average, 81 to 2010. In fact, it will be a bigger anomaly compared to 81 to 2010, because that, of course, encompasses all of the warm years that we've had over the past 30 years. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a cold and average month. This does tie in quite nicely with the April month-ahead forecast from GasWeatherViz.com. We did issue that forecast at the start of the month and said April was likely to be our first cold and average month of the year. I think that's going to come true, but we'll wait until the stats come in finally at the end of the month before we blow our trumpets too much. But I do think this is going to be our first colder than average month of the year. March came very, very close to it as well, but I think April is going to be solidly colder than average. Right, let's have a look at the 500 millibar high denominators next week to 10 days. Then this is going to take us up to the 8th of May. Instead of the 8th of April. We've got the ECMWF here on the top. The GFS is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere. High pressure, low pressure. The moves down by jet stream running above. Red extrapolates to high pressure and blue to low pressure. So very subtle changes here for the next week to 10 days. We've still got a lot of blocking, a lot of red here over top of the pole. And we've still got this trough underneath it. So technically, it isn't that different from the pattern we've got at the moment, but the difference is that we've got a ridge building to the east of us across central parts of Europe, and the effect that this has is to do something like that with the flow. So we start to drag up, even though we've still got a lot of blocking over top of the pole, we start to drag up a warmer southerly, southwesterly influence. So we should start seeing the temperatures lifting up as we go into next week, despite the fact that we still are basically in quite a blocked sort of scenario. It is a very subtle difference, but it's an important difference, I think, as we go into next week. The GFS, that's ECMWF, of course, the GFS is very similar. Still quite a lot of blocking here over the top of the pole. There's still a trough underneath it, but the trough is more centred around the UK. So this is a more unsettled scenario as we're going through the course of next week. But it is Atlantic driven, and the temperatures should be lifting up even on this scenario. The blocking is gradually reducing over top of the pole, and more of an Atlantic influence is coming in there as we're getting into next week, which should start to pick the temperatures up. You can see this on the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average, very significantly colder than average at the moment and staying that way for the rest of this week and into weekend. But as we go through the bank holiday weekend and into next week, you see that the trend is up with the temperatures. They do lift above the red line, so we should start seeing milder air getting in, I think, as we go through into next week. Not a heat wave, There's no sign of anything really hot coming up there, really warm, but certainly a big improvement in the temperatures back towards average, maybe a little bit above average as we go into next week. In terms of the precipitation spikes, you see there are precipitation spikes coming through. You wouldn't necessarily say it's a desperately wet period by any means, but certainly it looks like there's going to be further showery bands of rain coming through as those temperatures lift up over the weekend and into next week. As I say, we'll have a detailed look at the bank holiday weekend this evening. Here's the temperature anomaly then for the coming week. This going from the 28th of April through to 6th of May, and it's colder than average for UK, colder than average for most parts of Europe. Now, this is less of an anomaly compared to what we had a couple of days ago. Remember, I showed you these charts earlier in the week, and we really had deep blue colours there with anomalies of around 6 to 8 degrees colder than average. The anomaly isn't as bad as we're going over the next week to 10 days. It is still cold on average, but it's a more sensible anomaly, if you like, around 2 degrees colder than average. And I would expect these will reduce further as we go over the next few days. So by the time we get through the start of next week, these charts may even be showing a little bit above average. It'll be interesting to see early next week. Precipitation anomaly looking like this: wetter than average for Scotland and Northern Ireland from the 28th of April through to 6th of May. Bit drier than average down in the south, so it implies a north-south split, setting up with high pressure close to the south, ridging in from the Azores. That's why the temperature's starting to lift up. So just have a look at the generic charts. Here we go for Bank Holiday Monday from the GFS. Low pressure driving in, so it'll be a band of rain in the north and west. That'll be coming south and eastwards through the day. As I say, we'll have a detailed look, one final detailed look at the bank holiday weekend this evening. We go into Tuesday, start of a working week, of course. Got high pressure to the south and low pressure to the north. So we're reverting to a much more classic and typical scenario that you would expect in May, or at any month in the year, really. You would expect westerlies to be generally quite typical, and that's what we see on Tuesday with westerly flow coming through. It's most unsettled in the northwest, it's driest in the south. Wednesday brings another trough through. That could be quite an active one, bringing a band of rain. But notice the winds are going into the south or southwest ahead of that trough, so warmer air is pushing up from the south. That's cut off, though, by Thursday as the winds go back into the northwest. Still driving in off the Atlantic, though. And then we go to the end of next week and on into day 10, which is Sunday, the 8th of May. Still looks very changeable, really, but the overall idea is still that low pressure is coming in off the Atlantic, so things are still moving in a more general and typical fashion of west to east, as opposed to what we've had over the past few days, which is very much northerly to southerly. So a west to east movement, air coming in off the Atlantic. It shouldn't be too bad with the temperatures and recovering temperatures taking place. The East ODF looking like this: high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north. Bank holiday Monday, there'll be a band of rain spreading south and east across the country. Tuesday takes us back to sunshine and showers around that area of low pressure. Wednesday still looking changeable, a bit of a ridge building down to the southwest. Elsewhere, low pressure bringing showers and longer spells of rain to the north. That ridge gets more influential on Thursday, so a bit of a difference to the GFS. Still on the height anomalies, of course, that the GFS is more unsettled compared to the ECM. So we've eventually turned winds into the south at the end of next week. This is the 6th of May, and high pressure is to the east, low pressure is to the west. The winds are starting to push up from the south. That will be bringing warmer air out of France. I think it's very quickly broken down as a weather system starts to move in by day 10. This is how it looks on Sunday the 8th of May. There's a weather system right over the top of the country there, I think, so doesn't actually look too bad, but somewhere around here there's a weather front that's wriggling around, so it probably turns quite wet, but the temperatures would be reasonably warm. If we just have a quick look at the upper air temperatures before we go, you can see really quite warm air is being drawn up from the south and the southeast in that sort of scenario. I'm not sure about that. The GFS looks more plausible for how things will evolve next week, but I think the basic ideas, whilst the details are a little bit uncertain, we're going to see an improvement in the temperature. So if you don't like this cold wave, you're fed up with it, looks like it'll be easing over the next few days. And next week should see temperatures returning to average, maybe even going a little bit above for a day or two. And still changeable. GFS, of course, much more changeable than the East area, but they both imply there'll be some rain coming in off the Atlantic, but also some drier spells as well. So if you're a gardener or a farmer, just a couple more days of concern for this cold weather, and then maybe you can start relaxing a little bit. Right, that's all for now. Come back this evening for the bank holiday weekend update. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.